Hello viewers, George here, and today I'm going to bring to your attention uh, the after action report for Scenario 3. Scenario 3, Battle of Stalingrad. The game is Squad Leader. Squad Leader was, as many of you know, a war game, board game simulation of this tactical fighting during World War II. So this scenario was particularly challenging. I was playing Bob Osipov. Bob was playing the German players and the German player, and I was playing the Soviet player. So as the Soviet player, I incurred numerous setbacks towards the beginning. Uh, let's review the board from left to right. So here we have the Soviet engineers, and the first setback was incurred by them. They're attempting to flank and bring firepower closer to the German player in this direction and in this direction. And in Building 04, three Soviet engineer squads lost their lives right off the bat by Mr. Kelso. On the right side of the building, the German player was lucky enough and able to exact morale checks on the Soviet player, including the Soviet leader. However, they did survive to a large extent, enough to cause some concern for the German player. Um, in this building here, a German player was not so lucky. He attracted a lot of attention from Soviet fire. Eventually, his squad himself ended up retreating in this direction. The German heavy machine gun was captured, and in this building here, despite incurring a heavy toll in terms of morale checks, they were able to rally thanks to the fact that I was able to preserve the leader from German fire. In addition to that, I had done one stupid mistake where I forgot that there was a squad below this light machine gun, ran up to him, incurred point blank fire range, uh, and ended up getting the squad eliminated. This building here and this building here also attracted a lot of German fire, to the point that this fellow had to route to this wooden building, as you'll see in the upcoming slides. And over here, at least two squads and a leader died because of continuous morale checks. The Germans were not so lucky, however, in this building. Uh, little by little, they were flushed out of that building completely. And as for the tractor works itself, I completely miscalculated the ability to retain it uh, in the face of superior firepower from the German player. Honestly, I did rely a lot on concealment. It was not enough, and in turn, the Germans had the ample opportunity to capture some of the Soviet weapons. So as you can see here, much of the Soviet squads were cleared out of the tractor works, not without incurring two close combats that took some time to resolve, turn after turn. In addition, these two squads were heroes of the Soviet Union as they managed to delay the German player considerably. And Tinneman played the role of Death Star here and constantly doing long range fire against all the units bordering here. So let's see how everything unfolds. Um, as you can see, my Russian tanks, which were on the board in the previous slide, but ever more prevalent now, have been able to push the German player back. Kelso ends up being surrounded by the Soviets. all the units in the center building have routed, in large part due to the tank, to the Soviet armor. And we're in a position now where we can continue harassing and the German player here, although we have a near complete uh, victory. In addition, this Soviet tank had been here before. We were attempting to protect its flank by another Soviet tank that got eliminated by the Stug down in W8. Although it was eliminated, it presented itself as an obstacle, both to the Soviet player, but also to the German. Now we are here in turn 4. Uh, most of the game is almost over, and as you can see, we're still hanging to dear life in the tractor works, delaying the German player and causing morale checks. Eventually, we would be able to cause a morale check to Tinanam. And the Soviet player here has incurred losses due to attrition and morale checks. They're just being constantly peppered by German fire in the hopes that they can regain the right side of the board. I may be repeating myself, but Kovenov was instrumental. This leader here was instrumental in keeping these Soviet troops rallied, and in addition, he was able to also skip across the blind road hex, and rally these troops here. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the German player turn 4. Ooh, there's the German player turn 4. And as you can see here, the engineers finally have captured the building in F5. Kelso has routed here, and now the Russian T-34 rather, will have an opportunity to advance. This T4 has remained there, and this T4 is supporting the Soviets up here. The relentless fire to eliminate the Russian player along this axis here has caused at least one Russian squad to go berserk. However, it was much to the favor of the German player, because as he tried to advance and take out the German squad here, he was cut to pieces trying to cross the street. The leader here was eventually eliminated by morale checks, and the Soviet units were also eliminated here, allowing the German player to bring a considerable amount of firepower against this building here, to which how we replied was by retreating 1 hex and taunting the German player to come and get it. So up to this point, it was touch and go. A victory here, a loss there for both sides. A heavy toll of life. Close combat, always ever present. And let's go now to the final turn and see how things panned out. How things panned out is as follows. Eventually, Mr. Kelso was the leader, the German leader here, Kelso, was eliminated by virtue of morale checks. The Soviet player was able to advance 2 engineer squads and a regular infantry squad along these buildings. The German player was able to eliminate these units here and capture these 2 buildings and this building and that building. And ultimately, he wanted to also capture this building, but was not able to make it. It was at this point that he pretty much conceded to a draw. Kohanov, as I previously stated, was able to rally a considerable number of squads uh, in this um, in this building here. He had initially rallied one squad here. This squad had moved down. He jumped over to this building and rallied the remaining of the squads. Here, the German player was able to route all of my units back to this building, but not before he incurred another morale check. He was able to advance his tank that was in this square hex here all the way there, bypassing my T-34. However, my T-34 ended up chasing him and distracting him from causing any damage here. In order to advance into to the to the town, um, the German player did score a successful hit on this tank, but was not able to touch this one. And this tank here, and the remaining of the German Soviet units were able to eventually score a morale check here on the one of the most powerful German leaders, keeping him successfully out of action in terms of being an effective force um, in battling the Soviet player. He had resorted eventually to just staying in this building and and firing long distance with quite a bit of firepower to the Soviet player. He was successful in helping these two, or rather these two German leaders in capturing these buildings, regaining control of them. However, I don't think the German player was counting on these forces living or being in any position to defend this area here, nor for this fellow retreating into that building and being a force to be reckoned with if they do decide and were successful in capturing this building. So I hope you enjoyed this after action report, and feel free to drop any questions below, subscribe, like. The next installment, hopefully, if everything goes well, will be Scenario 6, Escape from Veliky Luki, which takes place in 1943. My opponent and I, Bob Osipov, we're playing scenarios 1 to 12 in chronological order, not numerical order. So by 1943, some of the German forces, if not all, are retreating, are in a state of retreat. The Soviet offensives have begun, and the encirclement movements that the Germans were able to execute against the Soviets are now being are now being retaliated towards the Germans by the Soviets. So what Scenario 6 is about a numerically inferior German force trying to escape through Russian lines, and the Russians are nearly superior to the Germans. I would say 2 to 3 to 1, 13 versus 5. So the other thing I'd like to say about Scenario 6 is not too many people have played it. I don't think there are too many after action reports regarding Scenario 6, because in terms of combat, it is not a scenario regarding combat. It's about deception. It's about moving at night, avoiding combat, and escaping from a deadly trap. So in this game, I agree to play the Germans for a change, and Bob will get the opportunity to play as the Soviet player. It'll be interesting how the events unfold. Until then, have a pleasant time, and I'm looking forward to publishing the next installment. Thanks.